So, Dean Cobb, thank you very much for joining the Greek Public Television.
Thank you.
When I was coming for this interview, I was thinking Robert Redford passed away a week ago, and I remember his role in All President's Men. And I didn't live in the 70s, but I know that in the 70s, journalism was considered to be, you know, a very powerful profession. And a lot of young people were inspired by the example of the two journalists that uncovered the Watergate scandal. I wonder whether in 2025 there is, in the American society and in the world, a lust for the journalism career.
You know, there's a yes and no kind of answer to that. And the yes is that there are still very many dedicated people, and you know there are as many inspirational stories now as there were in the 1970s. And you know, fortunately, at Columbia Journalism School, we're the home to the Pulitzer Prizes. Each year we get to celebrate, you know, the incredible pinnacle of American journalism in our building, and there are so many heroic stories. We just had the Oaks Awards, and Carla Mendez, who is also participating in this conversation, she did a series of investigations in Brazil where she risked her life to expose cattle ranchers that were illegally logging and using land in the Amazon that really was supposed to be preserved. Extremely dangerous. And she did it in order to bring that story to the public. And so there are lots of reasons to be inspired, and we still have you know, people coming into the field and doing great work and so on. On the other side of it, it's much more difficult now than it was then. It's difficult in terms of the economic structure. It's difficult in terms of the upheaval, technological disruption, all of the challenges. And then when Woodward and Bernstein did their investigation into the Nixon White House, they had one huge benefit, which was that the public would believe them. Now, an expose of that caliber might not even be believed by the American public or by a significant portion of the American public. And so it becomes a much more complicated landscape to do good journalism work in.
So to that end, is press freedom in America today threatened more by politics or by the public's loss of trust in the media, you think?
More directly by politics. You know, the longer-term threat is by, I think, the lack of trust from the public. And, you know, there are lots of different, you know, ideas about why that's happening. I should also say that the public has lost faith in a lot of institutions in the United States and around the world. We're seeing this as a global trend. But the more immediate threat, especially when we look at what's happened in the past week in the United States with the attempted silencing of Jimmy Kimmel, the late-night television host, and the $15 billion lawsuit that the president filed against the New York Times, also filed a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, you know, has threatened to take the licenses of news organizations that tell stories that don't paint him in a favorable light. All these things are egregious violations of the First Amendment. And I think that is probably the most direct threat to press freedom in the United States right now.
Okay, you give me very good examples that I want to fathom a little bit on that. When big outlets settle lawsuits, like the CBS did, the 60 Minutes, ABC, are they protecting themselves or are they, you know, weakening press freedom?
I think that these organizations are taking what appears to be the easiest route out of a particular problem, but what they do is create more problems. ABC settled a lawsuit that they likely would have won, but they settled it for, I think it was $16 million, you know, with Donald Trump. And he came back and pressured them more. It wasn't like settling that suit bought them goodwill. It emboldened him, which is what happens when you try to capitulate to a bully. They become emboldened and they do more of the same. And so there is an illusion that it makes a problem go away, but really it just exacerbates the problem.
But, you know, on that, how do you explain what ABC did with Jimmy Kimmel's show? They canceled the show and then they brought him back. What was the evolution of events and how did we end up here?
So there are a whole lot of things that we don't know about, you know, the particulars of this. The one thing that we do know is that there was pressure from the FCC, which is, you know, the federal oversight agency in the United States, and that there was pressure from companies that owned particular affiliates or you know, channels, ABC channels around the country. The political part of it, and some of this was economic. You know, people were upset with, you know, what he said, and they said they weren't going to watch the show and so on. The biggest problem is that the federal government was involved in this. If the federal government was not involved in it, it would just be a kind of social issue. It would have gotten resolved.
Between Jimmy Kimmel and the network, I guess.
Between Jimmy Kimmel and the network. And then on the other side of it, there were people who, in the name of free speech, in the name of the First Amendment, were refusing to watch Disney shows because Disney owns ABC. And so people were canceling their subscriptions and you know, refusing to watch Disney movies and all of the other kinds of properties that Disney owns. And so all of that, you know, is contentious and is complicated, but those things can be resolved outside of government interference. Once the government becomes involved in it, it is an explicit violation of the First Amendment.
So I understand what you're saying, that what worries you the most is government threats like the FCC license revocations, more than, you know, corporate pressure inside the media industry.
Well, I think in that order, I'm still worried about the other thing, but my primary concern is about government censorship.
Do you sense that the U.S. still sets the standard for press freedom, or do you sense that other democracies have overtaken it?
I don't think the United States sets the standard for press freedom at the current moment. I don't think that we can make that argument. I think we have an administration that's hostile to the idea of press freedom. And you know, we have a president that referred to the press as the enemies of the people, and you know, has acted, you know, against the press in a number of different instances. So in that context, I don't think that we can say that we set the standard for press freedom. Even the indexes for press freedom around the world have noted that the United States has been falling, you know, for many years now. And so these are things that should be of concern for people in the United States and beyond. That said, one of the benefits that we do have is that even in its diminished state in terms of trust, there are people who still recognize, and there are many people in the country who recognize foundationally what the First Amendment is supposed to do. And even one of the good signs was that even people who are really very hardcore conservatives came out against the FCC's involvement in the removal of Jimmy Kimmel from the airwaves.
In a polarized country where facts themselves, they are disputed, how can journalism survive?
I think that I have ideas about this, and you know, I've talked about this, you know, a number of times. That I think that the press has to invite the public in to the process. We generally present news, and the way that the news is cultivated and developed and researched and reported remains a mystery almost. Is behind the veil. And I think that that gives room for people to say that we're just making things up, or you know, maybe we have our thumb on the scale for one particular candidate or another, and we have to open up that veil. We have to show people how we reported a story. And you know, in some instances, that will mean maybe at the end of a print story, you just have a link that can just, here are all of the documents that I used for this story, or here are all the people who I called, and here are the transcripts of the interviews. You know, we have to kind of.
And what about sources protection there?
Well, there are some points where you can't do that, but we should strive to make the point at which we are at, you know, anonymity as small as possible. There's a certain portion by which we have to ask the public to trust us. But in most instances, to the greatest extent possible, we should be transparent and say, this is everything that we put into this story.
You know what? The trend that I find the most scaring is the fact that I look at the numbers. People over 45 and 50 still watch some TV, but they're all in social media and other parts of the internet. People below 45, they don't trust anymore any of the traditional media, either call it newspapers and television. So how do we create a new generation of readers, of consumers of news outlets, of consumers of the very essence of the news industry?
Here's the thing that's really frustrating about this. Younger people don't trust the traditional news outlets, but they tend to trust social media personalities who are in fact talking about things and information that they got from the traditional news outlets.
From the media, exactly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Someone still has to do the work of reporting. And if we're talking about TikTok or we're talking about any of the other social media platforms that are out there, what you have are people who are basically aggregating information that has been reported in other outlets. And so we have to do better as a medium of kind of cultivating ways to express and to disseminate news in these new forums. And the social media influencers are better at this than we are. They just have figured these things out, and some of this is personality driven. All these things, they're very good at it. But what they do is not the same as the thing that we do. And we are still very much necessary, even if the public doesn't quite recognize it.
And what about the business model of journalism? Back in the 70s, with the example that I used at the start of our conversation, you had Washington Post. They had so much revenues coming from advertisement, so much money coming from newsstand sales. Today, none of these pillars exist. So what is the economic model, the business model that the news organization can work on to be sustainable in the future?
We don't know yet. And one of the things is, we can kind of wring our hands in despair, or we can think about this as a really exciting opportunity, as a moment in which we are experimenting with lots of different things to try, all kinds of different ways of producing news. One of the things I find that is really exciting in the United States has been the growth of nonprofit news organizations. And so many of them are, trying to find the right mix of philanthropic support, foundation support, or, also and, what the public will contribute. Some people are doing things that involve public events that are, also revenue generating. There are other models, one of which that I think is really interesting is the endowed news organization, where a news organization will raise a certain amount of money for an endowment, and then the return on that endowment will be the budget for the news organization for the year. And so we haven't really seen how far we can go with either of those models. And people are also kind of mixing and matching and trying to find other things. And it's good for us to at least think about this as a kind of engine of innovation and us having an opportunity to redesign, as opposed to the kind of doom and gloom. We've already seen the doom and gloom, but we're still here.
Right.
We haven't disappeared yet. And as long as we're here, we have the possibility of creating something that's more sustaining.
And what about the relationship of the news organization and the big tech? Meaning the big tech, they're making zillions of money out of the work that news organizations are making. And even with AI, they're stepping it up. For example, you do a Google search, AI comes and gives you the result without even pressing on the link for the news organization and work that journalists have done throughout maybe some years. How do you resolve this?
This is going to be one of the big fights of our time, and this is going back, with the news organizations that were, before they decentered news, they were generating so much revenue, and none of that advertising revenue was going back to the news organizations themselves. And so there have been these various ways in which these entities have made money, generated search results that they then tie to advertising, but are not tied to actually giving revenue back to the places that originated the information that went into those search results. I think that Europe has been more forward-thinking about this than the United States has been. As you know, in the United States, regulation is a dirty word.
Yeah.
Eventually, if we're going to survive, that's one of the things that has to happen. We're going to need serious reform. But it's very difficult because tech has a very powerful lobby. They have lots of influence, and we haven't figured out the way to navigate this just yet.
And for some funny reason, we have taken so much examples from the 70s, but if we say that the fight between Nixon and the media in the 70s ended up with the victory of the media, do you sense that 50 years later, the fight between President Trump and the media will end with the defeat of the media?
I don't think so. I think that we're in a very serious fight. We're in a difficult moment, but I think that media will prevail. At least I think high caliber, committed, pro-democracy journalism will survive to fight another day.
And the political climate in the U.S. worries you? Do you sense that the United States is a very divided, hugely divided country, or do you sense that the checks and balances and all the institutional tools that the Constitution offers can help the American democracy to survive?
Our hope is the latter. I think that we're in a very dangerous time and that other societies, the United States has a hard time, I think, thinking of its, understanding itself by the yardstick of other societies. That's not something that Americans tend to do very often. But I think if we were talking about any other society, we would be very concerned about the collapse of civil society. We'd be concerned about the retreat from democracy, creeping authoritarianism, all these things that are happening. I have faith that it's possible to address these things. I don't think that any outcomes are guaranteed or that we are certain to have a democracy. Anyone that, being here and the cradle of democracy, the lesson that we've learned, over the course of these millennia is that democracy is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. And there are still millions of people in the United States who understand that lesson. We're being tested in ways that are not common to our generation. Maybe prior generations understood this or experienced this, but this is in fact a really huge challenge.
In a sense, you're at the center of two parallel wars from the presidency. You're presenting a university that is also under attack, and the media world that is also under attack from the presidency.
Trust me, I'm very aware of this. So I think about it at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. Finally, Columbia Journalism School attracts students from around the world. What role do you see the school playing in shaping the next generation of journalists, not just for America, but for other countries where press freedom is also under attack?
We are a global institution, and we're very proud of our legacy of training and educating journalists who go on to lead news organizations and to do important journalism work around the world. And we've been doing this for 113 years, and we remain a cutting-edge institution. We are teaching, as you know, documentary journalism and teaching data journalism and computational journalism, and we are, at every kind of frontier, we are experimenting with ways to integrate AI into the newsrooms and thinking of ways that we can use this technology to be beneficial to us as opposed to just the disruptive part of it. And so it's a very consequential time for a journalism school, but it is also a very exciting time to be Columbia Journalism School.
Jelani Cobb, thank you very much. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.